Welcome to a very special edition of New Day Cleveland. This is Haunted Northeast Ohio. And over the next hour, we're exploring some of the local legends, lores, and ghost stories.
Yes, it is going to be a bit spooky. You are about to meet several local historians and be introduced to those who see what we cannot, hear what we don't, and possibly even communicate with those who have passed.
We begin in the flats, where things aren't always what they seem.
Well, the area of the Flats in Cleveland is notorious for haunting, so much death. I've been researching Cleveland for a long time, and I've discovered that the Flatiron Cafe in Cleveland, right on Center Street, is one of the most haunted places you'll find out in the Flats. It's been an Irish bar for a long time, since 1910. Before that, it was a brothel, and one of the ladies actually dropped a cigarette and burned the place halfway down, and they were able to rebuild, but they did lose some lives. A few people died in the building, and we believe it is her that haunts the place. Recently, I had a woman on a tour who had walked up the stairs to the second level of the restaurant, and she exclaimed that she didn't feel good, and I said in a joking manner, "Oh, someone hold her hand." And she exclaimed, "How'd you do that? Something's holding my hand." And we got a really good photo of a skeleton hand covering her hand. The dimes in the Flatiron is well known. Most people, you would think, reaching in and out of their pockets for change, you would find, pennies and nickels and quarters. We find always dimes. Dimes on the doorsteps, dimes on the floors, dimes on the bar. And they have a collection of them in a jar. If you want to see them, you want to see the haunted dimes, we believe that the spirits leave them here. Why they leave them, I don't know. So this is just one of the stops on my ghost tours that I show people around. In fact, there's many other places in the Flats here. Let's go for a walk. Not many people know that water can be haunted. When you have disasters on the water, the spirits can actually remain in the water. On July 16th, 1896, a boat was carrying people across the river. Another tugboat came around the corner, and the wake toppled everybody. A lot of people died. They recovered 16 bodies. It is said that this place, this space, if you look down into the water, you can still see the people there, still reaching up, trying to be saved. I've actually interviewed some people who were fishing off the pier right here, and they said that they thought they saw something in the water trying to crawl up the ladders. This is one of the creepiest spots on my tour, but wait till you see the next spot. We got one more place to go to that's truly haunted. We're at the Columbus Street Bridge. It was built in 1870. This place is haunted, and it's because of the torso murder of the 1930s. He stashed bodies here. He hunted his victims on the roads here. The woman whose body was stashed here, we believe she is the woman that walks back and forth over the bridge. She'd be like a shadow figure. In 1991, I used to drive horse and carriage, and I actually witnessed a phantom jumper. And this person was standing at the top of the bridge, and I saw him jump. But he never hit the water. I never heard the splash. And when I came around the corner and asked a guy on a boat nearby what happened to him, he said, "Oh, that's the phantom jumper. He jumps over and over again." And it's a classic example of what we call residual energy, like a looping, an X-ray of some trauma. It usually happens right at twilight, right at dusk.
Not all ghostly encounters will leave you with goosebumps.
There's a historic home, it's in Akron, where the spirits are said to be friendly.
I like it.
So the fun thing about the house is when it was built in 1835 to 1837, it was 1 mile outside the city limits of Akron. So General Perkins that you see here behind me actually founded the town in 1825, but he didn't live here. So he sent his son 10 years later and they built this house. It was a home to Colonel Simon Perkins and his wife Grace. Colonel Perkins was our state senator that formed the county in 1840, and he and his wife had 11 children. The interesting thing about starting here in 1999 is that I'd worked at a bunch of house museums and I always felt scared, and this was the first place that I felt comfortable. And so I was here 6 months and I was at the front door, and while we were looking up the staircase, this woman says to me, "They like you." And I'm like, what? I look up and I see nothing. And I'm sorry, what are you talking about? She says, well, there's an older woman and a little boy and they like you. So I'm like, okay, I am at this place, I'm comfortable finally. And there are people that are in the house and I'm the only one in here with an office. So it was, it was the beginning of what became a really fun time. And so since 2006, then we have been giving paranormal tours of the house. There are no smoke and mirrors. It's just what other people have experienced, we share to you. So as we go to each room, we tell you what people have seen there or what has happened to them, whether it's being pulled, their hair's pulled in the middle of their head, they've been poked, they've been touched on the back of the leg because there might be a cat that wanders around here. And it's just all types of people and things. And so it's been really exciting to listen to people's observations of these things and to allow them to have that outlet. It's for fun. Right? So there's no judgment, and we do this typically in the month of October, but this year we're also going to do something in December, so we'll see what happens.
I love working at the mansion here because it is incredibly spirited. It has been one of the best places that I know of in Akron, and there's a lot of children here. There's just a lot of activity, laughter. A lot of times you can feel the children brushing across here. But one thing I've noticed here is I've never felt anybody angry. So it's just an amazing place to tap into spirit and have that experience. I've been tapping into spirit since I was 5 years old. One thing that I really enjoy doing here is called Realm to Realm, and basically what it is a spirit circle. I'm tapping into the participants, going around the table and sharing with them what I'm picking up through their loved ones. And it's interesting because we do end up having some anomalies happen with electricity often. We'll get the lights flickering or dimming. So we're in the pineapple bedroom, which is one of my favorite rooms in the Perkins mansion. I like it because there's a lot of children that seem to enjoy playing in here, right over here by the fireplace. I usually, when I come into the mansion, I use dowsing rods because I want to see where the activity is, and it is certainly pointing right over in the direction that I suspected they would be. No matter what time of the year I come here, it seems like there's a lot of activity in this area, this particular area. When I come into a room, I'll say, is there anybody here? Is there anybody here with us? And it's saying yes. Clear? Is there any children in the mansion today with us? So I'm hearing a little chattering right now in my mind. I'm hearing two little boys like giggling, laughing. They're amused right now. I think they're enjoying the attention they're receiving.
It's an amazing house. It's been in the Summit County Historical Society hands since 1945, and so we love to tell the story of the family and their influence on the city of Akron. But in the same realm, there are things going on here that we can't explain.
When we return, we are heading into the dungeon. Dun dun dun.
If you've ever wondered what early jail life may have been like, head west to Fremont and you'll find the historic Sandusky County Jail with dungeon dating back to the 1840s.
Between the dungeon and the actual gallows used in hangings, visitors and workers aren't the only ones believed to be making their way through those halls.
We're standing here today in the Sandusky County Historic Jail. This jail was built in 1892 and was used for just under 100 years up until 1989. And it was an area where all the Sandusky County lawbreakers were housed. The first floor was used for the higher offenders because it was close to where the booking room was and the sheriff deputies were able to keep an eye on the inmates.
Some of the claims of stuff happening down in the dungeon, people would see shadows, you would hear voices, especially of a woman in one area. You would get touched, people's hair would get pulled, our equipment would just go crazy in that area.
Personal experiences that I've had in the dungeon I've heard footsteps. I've heard whistling directly behind me. Turn around and no one will be there. I've seen shadows creeping around through cell blocks. I've seen things that weren't there and like your naked eye couldn't see, but if you had a camera or you have a video and you play things back, you'll see things that appear. I've heard things come across radios.
A gentleman did hang himself in one of the cells there back in the 80s. We managed to capture him on our SLS Connect. We actually captured the person hanging. It creates a stick figure and it showed him hanging there. Up in the attic where the gallows stands, we have captured voices. We actually captured what we believe is John Radford, the gentleman that got hung. People hear people walking, especially on the gallows.
Well, this building actually was closed for probably over a decade, and it was almost to the point where it was going to be torn down. So some historical grants were applied for, and they were able to renovate it and give it a purpose. So the purpose is today, it's used for a commissioner's office and some other court offices as well.
You know, we encourage people to come out because there's a lot of skeptics that want to witness it for themselves. You know, we bring out all our equipment. They get the opportunity to use it and see how it works. And there's been a few that came through that were skeptics and left believing.
It was once considered one of the finest buildings in Cleveland. Now the Variety Theater on Lorain Avenue is a faded shadow of its former self.
And while many people have come through the doors of the majestic theater, some have never left.
This place opened as the Variety Theater. It was opened as a vaudeville and movie house in November of 1927. It actually opened on Thanksgiving Day with a showing of Clara Bow's Hula. And for those of you who don't know who Clara Bow is, Clara Bow was the it girl of 1927, and the big deal was that she did a partial striptease and showed above her knee, which was a huge deal in 1927. It was a first-run movie theater up through the 50s and 60s. In the 1970s, the Coase family bought this building. Mr. Coase had never owned or operated a movie theater in his life. Came in, had both projectors, was able to get the prints, and so he did second-run films for about a decade. And when that started to wane, then they entered into an agreement with what at that time was Belkin Productions, which has gone now Clear Channel and Live Nation. And all of the major acts of the 1980s played here, including Metallica, U2 in the very early days, Stevie Ray Vaughan. Motorhead famously played here in 1984 and played so loud that they cracked the plaster in the ceiling, and that was the impetus to get the place closed down for live music. I can tell you since actually 2009, having walked in here, the first thing was walking in and seeing people, and I do mean people, what I thought were people, here standing in front of me about 30 feet away from the door, and you know, I kind of, you blink and you think, wait a minute, I'm not seeing, you know, and you see them, or coming in and seeing people in what I thought were costumes, but actually, upon further reflection, able to find that, you know, somebody from the 1930s. They were dressed in 1930s clothing. Also coming in and doing minor repairs or installing lights and things like that, so that we could see in here, having tools moved, having my keys moved, and I'm the only one in here, absolutely. I mean, there's a stuffed teddy bear on the stage, which was left by one of the groups, the ghost groups that have come through, because they said that they felt the presence of a small girl. And I came in here and that teddy bear on the stage was over in the corner. Now, it was in the middle of the stage when I came in, and I was the only one here. And what is it? So I went up and I moved it back over there, and then it apparently moved again. And so I just put it back and said, okay, I'm going to leave it, and if it gets moved again, that's obviously where they want it.
I've heard different stories about a figure being seen up on the balcony. Looks to be a male figure walking the balcony, which, you know, is it an usher? Is it someone who's just trying to find their seat? So, you know, it's kind of exciting. I've heard that there is a spirit who's been seen by the first floor water fountain. Thirsty? I don't know. Just bopping around. And I've also heard stories about workmen. You'll hear sounds of construction maybe coming from the stage, and one of those people was maybe attributed to a worker who had fallen off a lighting scaffold and been killed in the theater. So, you know, and you hear these stories, and you know that in a building with a history like this, someone has died here, or someone who was very close to it has perished and come back.
They're very friendly. I liken it to more of a Casper type of ghost as opposed to a malevolent. There are some darker forces here. You know, whether you believe in that stuff or not, really, to me, I know what I see, and I know what I've felt here. And if anything, this is home to me. So I don't feel startled usually. I can tell you that I've come in here several times and said, look, we're here to do good and to make this place shine, and we want to make you proud.
Our tour of haunted Northeast Ohio continues right after this with an eerie visit to Zor.
A quick drive down 77 and you are transported back in time.
That's right. The historic village of Zor is known for its perfectly preserved buildings and also its paranormal activity.
Zor was founded in 1817. They became a communal society in 1819. They all worked together for the greater good. They lived that way until 1898 when they decided that they were going to dissolve. Today Zor is a National Historic Landmark. We have many museum buildings to tour. Since the village was founded in 1817, most of the buildings are original. We have a lot of ghost stories, and almost every tour we get, somebody asks, you know, is it haunted? So we decided to go ahead and do the haunted tours just to share all those stories and experiences that past residents and even today's modern docents have experienced. So the Zor Hotel was founded in 1833 as an overfill for the Canal Tavern of Zor. It had many famous guests throughout the year, including President McKinley, who often frequented the Zor Hotel. So there's many spirits, many people involved in the hotel. We think the one main spirit is Mother Mary Roof, who actually took care of the hotel for 8 decades. Some of the sightings we have, there's different things about pictures being turned over that were of a lady that she was not in favor of because the lady happened to wear red stockings, which she did not approve of, so her picture often got turned over. And we are currently in the Zor Hotel. As you can see, it is under construction, but that adds to the hotel tours because you can see the original construction methods of the Separatists of Zor. We're currently going past the rooms that we think that President William McKinley would stay in. He would always get 2 adjoining rooms, and these are the best 2 rooms on the 2nd floor because they are right next to the balcony, so he could go out there and enjoy, you know, just some nice time away with Ida. Last year, after we were doing one of the ghost tours, we were cleaning up for the evening, so we were going through and getting all of our different lanterns and just kind of packing up for the night, and someone had a phone out to record anything, and we're just kind of asking, is there anyone up here? Is there any kind of person? We actually captured a recording that sounded like a lady whispering in German, so there's definitely still paranormal activity going on here in Zor. We're now in the magazine. This is where a lot of the paranormal activity in Zor takes place. A lot of our tour guides actually will not be in this building by themselves, even during the day for regular tours. We did have that one tour guide that couldn't get any of the doors open and decided then that at that point she wasn't alone and she was going to go ahead and climb out the window. There's also been kind of phantom footsteps in this building, and there's just an overall chill that you get when you're in here. Typically Technically, a magazine is a storage house for military goods, but since the society was pacifist, they used this for other household items such as tea, sugar, spices, anything that could be distributed amongst the households. Each household in Zoar was given a number since they lived communally, and then you were given your goods based on your household size. And each place, like the magazine, the dairy, the bakery, you would have your different goods distributed to by household number. When it comes to ghosts, I'm kind of a skeptic, but even here in Zoar, there's some things that have happened that I really can't quite ignore. There's been a couple times when I've gone to arm the buildings at night that a motion sensor has been set off, and I know I'm the only one in the building and there's no one else on the second floor. So then we just kind of lock up pretty quickly and give the building to the ghosts for the evening. It's their turn to have the building. And there's been a couple other times where you just kind of sense a presence, you know, especially if you're on this one floor by yourself, and you just kind of turn the music up a little bit, and for the most part I think they leave us alone.
You've likely heard the story of the Crybaby Bridge.
That is one of several legends that haunt Rogues Hollow.
Initially, this area was founded in the 1820s and first settled at that point, and it was actually named Pleasant Valley. And at the time Sam Chidester came into town and put up this mill to supply a livelihood, it was calm and pleasant. By 1840, with the Ohio and Erie Canal, and a lot of traffic being able to move product, and the discovery of coal, all of a sudden coal mines started to pop up everywhere. And at one time there were over 100 mines in operation, so by 1860s and the 70s, this place was no longer a peaceful valley. You had to go through the hollow to get from Doylestown to Clinton, or Doylestown to Canal Fulton at that time. And so often you were stopped and you needed to pay a toll, or a toll was taken. And so it got a notorious reputation for that. The legends and the lores that you know, came about. One of them, it's the headless horse. That a low-hanging tree, which was called the Ghost Oak Tree, was kind of its nickname, was at the top of Clinton Road where it meets Fraze. That a low-hanging tree that on horseback or on carriage you had to duck to get under it on a regular basis. That once, one of the bigger horses in the area at 18 hand high, at full gallop on an icy, so the tree was a little bit lower than normal even, ran into it and took its head off. So for many years after, it was supposedly seen. A lot of the legend and lore of the ghost stories here at the mill. It's told of one of the workers who slipped on the foundation by the water wheel and was killed, and that he came back nightly to finish his work, and so he was seen often. One of the other myths in the area is about Crybaby Bridge, that a young woman became pregnant and her boyfriend left after finding that out, and so soon after the baby was born that she threw it over the bridge. And it's said that late night on certain evenings you can still hear the cry of the baby if you listen really closely. But just to clarify, the actual bridge that was Crybaby Bridge on Silver Creek was up about a mile, and that washed out in the flood of 1913. And so currently this is the bridge, but there's still folks who say that the spirit of the baby exists here now, and if you listen closely on the moonlit night, you can hear the cries. Well, this is a 24-acre nature preserve. We have trails that are open during the daytime hours. We close at dusk every day, so you can enjoy a lot of the local nature and what we have. The mill was restored in 1976 and currently has on display some memorabilia from the mining days, as well as Chippewa Township and Doylestown artifacts. We recently just restored and put a new water wheel on the backside to replicate what was there originally. It seems the midnight hour might be the time to hear and see a lot of the things that are legend. The park does close at dusk.
Still to come, marching back in time.
Did you know that America's oldest independent armory is located right in downtown Cleveland?
And with all that history, there's bound to be a few haunts. We're headed inside the Cleveland Gray's Armory Museum.
Cleveland Gray's Armory Museum, first and foremost, is the second home of the Cleveland Grays. The Cleveland Grays were the original protectors of Cleveland. They were a militia. This is pre-Civil War, pre-Mexican border campaign, everything. They were originally called up to just help out when there was crime happening throughout Cleveland. When they first started up, they originally called themselves the Cleveland City Guard because they picked a gray uniform. People say, here come the Cleveland Grays when they'd march, and they changed their name. They did turn navy blue for the Civil War because they did answer Lincoln's call to arms. They went back to the traditional gray color once the Civil War ended. They built this building in 1893 after the original armory burned, as most armories did. When you had gunpowder and you had gaslight fixtures, when those two things met, there was a big explosion. When they built this building, they put in a lot of electricity. So when there was a small fire, the rest of the building stayed standing. It just blew the roof off of the drill hall. We have been here since 1893, and we actually still maintain the building through the work of the Cleveland Grays, the support of the museum and the membership.
Some of the greatest things that people are going to see is actually Gray's Armory itself, because they get to come into a huge piece of Cleveland's history. But the benefit that we give them is they get to hear about the ghosts. And Gray's has quite a few that the staff has named, which I think is nice, keeps everybody in the family. They have their ghost Patrick, who they believe is a spirit of one of the original workers who constructed the building. It was mainly built by Irish immigrants, so they felt naming him Patrick was a good plan. And Patrick seems to have a problem with how they decorate things, so sometimes he'll change things around for them. They have a really interesting ghost who sometimes nobody sees him, but they can tell he's there. They had one of their original executive directors, Major Lou Grosser, who passed away, unfortunately, in the drill hall downstairs. And Lou had a habit of smoking his pipe around the armory, and every so often the caretakers will smell somebody just kind of walking past him with a pipe going, and it's a vanilla pipe tobacco that they're pretty sure is loose. So he pops in every now and again to make sure they're doing a good job. We had one young lady who I thought she was getting ill. I thought she was going to pass out. She was staring at the staircase, just petrified. And finally I went up to her and I'm like, do you want to go outside? Do you need some air? And she's like, I just saw somebody in uniform standing on the stairs. And I'm like, okay, do you want to go outside? And she's like, no, I kind of want to hang out and see if anything else happens. So we head up to the second floor, and she walks past where she saw what she said was a spirit in a uniform. And I mean, I broke out in goosebumps. She broke out in goosebumps. We get to the second floor, and she's like, I swear he's at the back of the group. And she said she felt like this through the whole tour. So finally, we were on the third floor, and she started to get really tired. I said, let's go outside, get some fresh air. We went outside, and she's like, I just felt so drained for a little bit. And I said, well, then apparently he was trying to make contact with you somehow and kind of just attached. But it was really interesting because you can tell when someone's seeing something that maybe not everybody's seeing. So what we try to do is make the most of the time we have with people, get them in these buildings that are such a huge part of Cleveland that people don't know about. You've walked past Gray's Armory every night for weeks, headed to Indians games. You've seen it, no idea what it is. Come on our tour, you'll get to come in and see what it is.
It's one of the most haunted spots in Ohio, a place where you can walk the same halls as history's most infamous prisoners.
Take a tour, if you dare, inside of the Ohio State Reformatory.
The history of the Ohio State Reformatory opened up in 1896. It wasn't for hardcore felons. It was mainly for guys who were between the ages of 16 and 30. They were nonviolent, first-time offenders. So you had a lot of petty thieves in here and all that. They kept it as a reformatory right until about 1970. Right around that time period, they turned it into a maximum security prison because it was needed. I think one of the things that really brings people here is the architecture. We have so many people that come here that look at it and go, this doesn't look like a prison. A lot of people call it Dracula's Castle. A lot of the inmates actually call it Dracula's Castle. The area we are now is where the warden and his family would have lived. The wardens lived here from opening day 1896 until right about 1959. This would have been their dining room, actually. The last warden that lived here full-time, his family lived here with him. And one Sunday morning, his wife was getting ready for church. She reached up into the closet to get her jewelry box down. She dislodged a .32 automatic pistol that belonged to her husband, and it fell and shot her in the left lung. She ended up passing away 3 days later at the local hospital. But over the years, people have reported seeing her and smelling her roaming the halls. Solitary confinement, one of the most haunted areas of the prison. One of the stories in here happened right around 1930. There's a corrections officer just doing his, hourly rounds. A couple of the boys broke out of their cells, beat them to death in here. Still to this day, we see them. It doesn't matter if it's day or night, we see them. There have also been tons of other murders and suicides in this area throughout the years. In here, you never know what you're going to get. Everything from full-blown, full-body apparitions to cell door sliding closed to camera failure, equipment failure, batteries going dead. You never know what you're going to get. I've been a paranormal investigator since, had to be 1993. I actually started here in 1998, so I had a good, solid foundation and knowledge of the paranormal even before I came to this building. There's something about it. I don't think there has been a single day where I've not walked in here and had something happen. It could be something as quick as, the quick smell of bacon and eggs near the warden's kitchen. Or it could be seeing a cell door close by itself, or it could be seeing, inmates walking down the tiers when I know I'm the only one in here.
When we return, we are heading east to the place where the spirits talk.
Built in the 1800s, this next location was a safe haven that housed the sick, the needy, the abandoned, and that was right here in Northeast Ohio.
Today, that building is a museum that gets visits from former residents.
We are inside the Lake County History Center in Paynesville, Ohio. The Lake County History Center was not always a history center. At one time, this was the Lake County Poorhouse. The poorhouse was called the infirmary for the county. In 1852, the government decided they would be hands-off on a welfare system and decided that the counties could handle their own indigent better than the government could. So each county was charged with finding a house where everybody could stay. The people who were in poverty were here, people who were ill, elderly, mentally ill. Many people were dropped off here, including unwed mothers. So it was quite a place where we could keep the ills of society away from the good people. It was kind of a sad system. I have never really read a lot of good stories about poorhouses. Almost every place we've been in this building, including the attic where we're standing right now, is very haunted. Up here in the attic, some of the things we've experienced includes we've had different shadow people up in this area. They've even been filmed. We've had experiences where a man was here and he felt like he was physically pushed back to the point where he almost felt like he was being attacked. So we've had strange things happen up here, as well as sounds like knocking, or we've captured voices on recorders that don't really belong. Are you here? I have never gotten your name. Could you please leave your name in this recorder?
You can definitely hear someone hurt.
Okay, the cell blocks in the basement here at the Lake County History Center were used to house the people that they could not control. So there was no real way to designate who was down there or who wasn't. I said anyone could be down there, anyone who misbehaved, or someone who was criminally insane, Or my favorite story down there involves a woman named Lucy, and Lucy was found running naked through the Painesville Square, so they assumed she needed help, brought her here, and she was housed in those cells for many, many years. But Lucy liked to escape, so she would be found running naked through the streets of Painesville. Unfortunately, she chose winter many times to escape, and she ended up with frostbite over and over again. After about 8 years of living in residence here, Lucy did die, but Lucy is a spirit we experience down in the cells still to this day. Mrs. White was a matron here back in the early days when they first opened this place. She was actually the wife of the superintendent of the building, and her job as matron was to continually be checking to make sure the inmates, as they were called, were looked after, that they were where they should be and weren't where they shouldn't be. She would constantly walk the halls, checking doors with her keys, and she is still heard and seen in this building, checking those doors. And we've even experienced Mrs. White pounding on the door more than one time, but you can hear the sound of her jingling keys many times as you walk down the hallways at night. Throughout the year, we offer lantern tours here in the evenings, and it's a very ghostly, fun time for anybody who'd like to attend. We do walk around in the complete darkness, led by a candlelight, and we have experienced many different things on the lantern tours. They're available some nights. You have to check the website to see when they're available. Not all year, because the building can get a little cool in the winter and a little hot in the summer, so we have to watch those times of year, but most of the year you can find a lantern tour.
Sandusky, known for fun spots like Cedar Point, but the city itself has a very rich history dating back to the Civil War.
And that history includes murders and mysteries that are believed to be the reason for paranormal activity in downtown Sandusky.
Well, the Maritime Museum of Sandusky, with this location, it was built in the early 2000s. So it's not an old building, but we have many old artifacts and a lot of history in this area. And I believe that may have a part in some of my experiences here. We've heard footsteps in the museum. We've heard voices. I've had my name called. I've had someone to call out hello like they were coming in to see us, and we were closed to the public at the time. One Sunday afternoon, a young gentleman that works here with us was cleaning some of the display cases, and he called out real excited, "Come here quick, look." And in the cleaning material on the plastic on the display case, it was the word prisoner. We take a 1-hour walking tour. It's a couple blocks. It's in the downtown Sandusky area. We have those on Sundays at 8 o'clock. I describe it as a little bit of exercise, a little bit of history, and some spookiness. So we have some great stories, from Underground Railroad to murders to train accidents to the prisoner of war camp, even some Cedar Point stories. One of my favorite stories is the Johnson Island story. There was a group of Italian immigrants after the war that was working on the island, and a storm came up. And when the storm came up, they seek shelter under some trees near the cemetery. Well, the next day, one of the foremen heard them singing a strange song, and he thought, well, that's strange. They can barely speak English. Where did they learn that? So he asked one of the guys, he said, "Where'd you learn that song?" He said, "Oh, it was coming from the cemetery. The song was Dixie." So, and the cemetery is the Confederate POW cemetery. There is reports of a young boy that drowned many years ago that has been seen along the beach. We have a rich history here, and we also have a rich history of some spookiness too. So if you're not a believer, it takes that one experience, that one moment when you're not expecting anything, when something happens that you are just like, what did I just experience? What did I just see or hear? And you're like, okay, maybe there is something else out there. So
there's much more still to come.
This beacon on Lake Erie is known for its light, but you might be surprised about the shadows it hides.
The Fairport Lighthouse has a very special ghost that roams the halls.
We're out at Fairport Harbor Marine Lighthouse and Museum. Really incredible spot out here on the lake. It's beautiful. This lighthouse is actually the second lighthouse that was in pretty much the same spot. This light, I believe, first lit in August 1871.
And the lighthouse that's out there now replaced the original lighthouse in 1871. And that lighthouse was used until 1925 when they put into operation the lighthouse out in the breakwater. And when you come to visit our museum, you of course can look at all the artifacts that we have here in the museum, including the lens from the lighthouse. And then you can also walk up to the top of the lighthouse, which is unique because there are a lot of lighthouses on the south shore of Lake Erie that you can't get into. We also have the pilot house from the steamer Frontenac, which was a Cleveland Cliffs boat, and it was built in 1923, and then they remodeled the pilot house in the 1960s, and we got the pilot house and attached it to our building.
Here at the lighthouse, one of the really awesome stories that we have is about Captain Joseph Babcock. He is the first lighthouse lightkeeper who lived out here with his family, and his wife unfortunately was very ill. When she became ill, she became bedridden. He brought her numerous cats to keep her company. Over the years, the cats just kept coming and coming and coming. One day, when Mrs. Babcock passed away, all the cats disappeared except for one. That cat hung around, and he continues to hang around. This was back in 1871, so we have to assume that Mrs. Babcock's last cat has left this mortal coil, but when there was some work being done to do some air conditioning work and whatnot in the underneath of the lighthouse, a worker was wiggling around on his back underneath and felt his head resting on something. When he reached around to feel what it was a mummified cat. So they think that Sentinel, their ghost cat, has been around since Mrs. Babcock's time. He has been seen by different curators in the museum. He's been seen playing, running around, and he likes to jump in bed with whoever is the curator at the time if they're living on property.
I'm here a lot of times when nobody else is here. I'm doing things, maintenance or whatever, and working in the building. And very frequently you will hear noises that you're not sure where they came from. And could be the cat, don't know.
There are also stories out here at Fairport Harbor of a little ghost boy said to be one of the children of the Babcock family who passed away from a fever. And he seems to be most active up at the top of the actual lighthouse itself. He likes to close the door on people. He just pranks, nothing malicious, nothing mean. Just likes people to know he's up there hanging around.
And that wraps up our tour of haunted Northeast Ohio. But before you rush out the door to do some exploring of your own, just know that some of these places that we featured on the show are closed to the public.
Yeah, so to see which ones offer those tours and to learn more about the paranormal experts that helped us with our show, you can visit us on fox8.com. Just click on that New Day tab. I'm a very spooky Natalie Herbeck today.
I'm David Moss, and I had a lot of fun, and we'll see you on the next
New Day Cleveland.